No, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I believe we are recording, and we are. Great. First thing to share is the agenda for tonight's Finance Committee. So first, we're going to go through the sales tax report and the treasurer report just real briefly. My intention is to have the monthly report out later this week. We just couldn't push it out quick enough today, so we wanted to get some financial information out for this discussion, and then we'll turn over to Nick to talk about some fees, and then we'll jump back into the sewer CFC discussion that we started a few meetings ago.
Okay.
So with that, let's see if I can pull open. We'll look at sales tax first. Back up a little bit. So far another good.
No, I think you have to unshare. We're just staring at the agenda. You might have to unshare and then start share again.
Thank you, Sean.
With a new doc, you bet.
There you go.
Yep, perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So far through the biennium, we've collected 83% of our budgeted sales tax revenue. We had a really good July where we were actually 10% above our 2019 collections and 20% above what we had budgeted for a July figure. So this is really great news now. Year over year, we're at right about 4% growth. And we're currently about 8 to 9% above what we had budgeted. So these are strong sales tax figures, encouraging from where we were looking at revenues in early March and April.
So my doom and gloom projections were way off base.
Well, what's great to see too is if something changes here in the next, 4 months, we have a little bit of a buffer to help offset that too. So it's kind of a little bit of an insurance policy right now. So it's just fantastic news.
Yeah.
We have no idea what the next few months are going to be like. So I don't want to be downy.
No, I'm just glad we're ahead of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and economically speaking, there's going to be some key things that are sunsetting, like the unemployment benefits. Maybe this money's kind of run its course, so we will see over the next couple of months how that impacts our consumption and our sales tax. But hopefully, Port Orchard will remain strong with the growth in our construction industry and housing market. Hopefully, continuing to buy lots of home projects.
Yeah. I mean, quick math, if we were to fall short at a rate of about 10% the next 5 months, we'd still come in above budget. So it's nice to have that little bit of a cushion considering what we just said. We just have no idea what's coming at us.
Yep. REIT, on the other hand, when we look at year over year, is actually 7.5% less than 2019 collections. On the whole, again, we have a strong amount of collections compared to our biennial budget because of 2019 was such a great year for us. We're still doing well compared to our set budget for 2020. Again, we're about 30% where we should be for the first 7 months of our set budget. But it is interesting to note that it is less than our actual 2019 collections.
Yep.
It's, and it's important to remember too, at the beginning of COVID, the construction industry just got shut down.
Yep.
And I know driving around out of McCormick Woods or playing around a golf out there, you see a lot of hammers pound. You're hearing a lot of hammers pounding out there. So I think that's, we may not recover all of what we lost, but it's definitely back on track, I think.
Well, and that's most evident with those May figures, which would have been what from March when they were flat shut down, March, April.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
So on the whole, all good news for us where we're sitting right now as we're moving into budget season. Gives us time to think ahead again. When we look at, I'm going to flip to our fund balance chart showing our cash and investment positions. Again, with our strong revenue and our reduction in expenses, we have healthy balances throughout every fund, which is excellent. So we can continue to monitor over the next few months. Everything looks very healthy and very good as we move into budget season.
Can you, on that particular report, can you go up to the account 107, Fund 107 Community Events?
Are you back?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about LTAC at the Economic Development meeting yesterday. And that total activity, that 43,000 that you're showing there, what would that have looked like last year? Is our LTAC actually reduced, or is my assumption is that a lot of our two primary motels, particularly the one downtown, has a lot of activity due to people working at the Navy Yard. And so I was wondering, by not having our festivals, how much that has really been influenced.
Yeah, we are actually down. We are trending less. So this 43,000 you're seeing on this report reflects the total revenue collections less the expenses paid out.
Right.
Most of the awarded participants are not going off their events, so there's only minimal dollars being sought for community events.
For reimbursements, right.
Reimbursement, but we are projecting to only receive about $87,000.
Okay.
We have a budgeting $100,000. In the last couple of years, we received 105 to 110. So we are trending significantly below where we have the last few years.
Okay, thank you. But
from a net ending balance, we're ahead of where we would normally be because the lack of dollars being spent are probably outpacing that negative variance, right, Noah?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Noah, on REIT, I see a balance of almost $3 million. And at one point, we were concerned about Tremont, and we had some of those dollars obligated, and we had some park projects going on last year that we were holding some of those dollars in obligation. And I know that once we get the pathway rolling, we're probably $500,000 to $1 million short of the federal side for all of our real estate acquisitions. So, saying, probably conservatively we're $500,000, but let's assume we are $1 million short. Are we really, there's nothing else that we've obligated that $3 million to at this point, correct? At this point in the budget?
Well, I would say at this point, since we haven't closed Tremont and the state hasn't come in and audited us to see if we properly expend those funds, we have them still obligated.
Okay.
Until we do that audit with TIB and they give us a clear look that says, yes, we've applied everything correctly, you don't owe anything back, we kind of want to hold those semi-obligated. But we're working through the TIB over the next month or so. So hopefully we will get through that process before the end of the year and can really close out Tremont and free up the real estate excise that we have obligated.
But are you aware of any major expenditures needed to finish up Tremont, or?
No, we're really close
for auditing.
Yeah, it's mainly for auditing. If they find that we did not handle some of the grant funds correctly, that we built a grant that we should not have, then we would have to repay that money. That's the part I'm most concerned about now, not necessarily the next couple change orders that are coming in to close out the project. It's ensuring that we properly build for all the grants, because we received a ton of money in grants for this project. So that's the big concern.
I have the utmost confidence in you and Heidi.
So does that mean you're already out spending it, Rob, or?
No, no, gosh, we've got a major well project that we've opened bids on, and you guys will see that next week. And, you know, the engineering guys don't get as excited as Noah and I do on how to pay for things. They just award contracts, you know. So, well,
Well, you mentioned the right-of-way acquisition for the path too, so.
yeah, I know we've got some deficiencies and we need to take care of, and I'm kind of eyeballing that pot of dollars.
Yeah.
Okay.
So all good news right now on the financial front. So we're maintaining steady course. We're starting to open up again, and the mayor will speak to this, you know, as far as our expenditures to complete out the biennium, working on projects, kind of getting them going again, but at a slower pace, just because everything is at a slower pace now with COVID. Even if we place an order, it might not arrive for, you know, several weeks. So our cash flows should be fine through the end of the year, and this will just roll really nicely into budgeting season, provided we can tie up TIB and then really talk about these other transportation needs and capital projects. With that, Nick, I'm going to turn the agenda over to you because you want to talk about your fee resolution.
Yes. So we sent out a proposed update to the city's fee resolution, and we are still hammering out a couple of details with the attorney. But generally, I wanted to bring a couple of things to your attention that we'd like to propose at this time, and we're hoping that the Finance Committee is comfortable recommending that this go forward. First of all, we sent you a resolution from 2008, which is our current hearing examiner resolution, and it's now 12 years old. And so we are now proposing to roll that into our general fee resolution rather than having information about the hearing examiner in two places. We're trying to get it all into the same document. So a lot of what is in this old hearing examiner resolution, resolution 19-08, is just being rolled over into the bigger fee resolution document, which is Noah has shared as Exhibit A. The other big change, and I'm going to jump around here a little bit, but every couple of years we like to update the IBC valuation tables, and the International Code Council, they twice a year release building construction data that shows what the per square footage cost for different types of construction is on average. And so when somebody comes in for a permit, sometimes they'll have a bid from a contractor that we can use to determine how much a permit costs. Other times they don't have that information, and we have to go off of a square footage basis to determine what the fee is going to be. So this typically increases every time they update it. We haven't updated it for about 2 years, and so this would update the valuation schedule on which our building permits are based. So it's a two-step process where you take the building valuation and then you plug it into, if you can scroll down, I think onto page 2 or 3, the valuation table there, then based on what your building valuation is, you plug it in and then you calculate the cost of each permit. So we're not changing the cost framework, we're only changing the valuation data that goes into that cost framework. Other than that, it is mostly moving some fees around and restructuring the document based on the changes with the hearing examiner. Also, the right-of-way permits was one thing that Public Works recommended we increase. Apparently, we're about 15% of what our neighbors charge for a right-of-way permit when you go and dig up the street. And then we have to come back and, number one, we have to process a bond. There's quite a bit of work that goes into that. Plus, then Darren has to go out on one or more inspections. And we were only charging $50 for that. And it's significantly more work in terms of the hours that are spent on that type of project. And other than that, then, Ellen included notes where things were changing, but I don't think there's anything controversial here. And if any of you have questions, I'm happy to answer those, but it seems pretty straightforward.
Hey, Nick, at the bottom of this document, I think it's this document, it talks about the hearing examiner deposit, and it seemed to contradict the main body of the table, but there is a note there. I think Tim had left a note. It's saying 3,000 in this document, but the other document has it at 2,500.
Yeah, we're proposing to increase it to 3,000 because the cost of a typical hearing has gone up. So
Okay.
we're spending more time on hearings. Our code is a little bit more complicated than it used to be, and so we're just trying to make sure that we are not paying more money out to the hearing examiner and then having to ask the developer for money. We'd rather refund them money when there's something left over, because in some cases we wait 4 years before a developer decides they're going to pay their hearing examiner fee, and we don't have a way to. And usually it's not a lot. It's $1,000 here or there, but increasing the deposit reduces the risk of that happening.
Should we update the other document to reflect that proposed change?
When you say the other document, so in what Noah is sharing.
Yeah, it's the PDF that references this exhibit.
Yes, so that PDF is being updated.
Okay.
So there's the old hearing examiner resolution. That's not what you're talking about, is it?
Nope. I can go back. I have to minimize my screen here and a second here.
Because the resolution 19-08 did reference a $2,500 fee, but we're going to repeal that resolution.
Let me just, you're being slow. Yeah, it wasn't that one. I think it was his other email.
Can you tell me which day you got that email? Because
It would have been,
it doesn't show the red line version.
so the red line version came through last week on Friday. It's a Word document came through at, I don't have a timestamp on here, 12:38 p.m.
Is that
So that's the one that Noah has up on the screen right now.
Yes, correct. And I'm trying to find the other one.
So the only PDF on that email was the old resolution that gets repealed.
And it might have been the set of documents he sent today. I just remember seeing it somewhere. I'm pretty sure it was in a table format, like some proposed changes. Cash investment. No, maybe it's not.
These ones down here, maybe? No.
I'm looking, and it could have been just me misreading something. Yeah, I think that's right. Nick, I think you're absolutely correct. I just was looking at section 2 of the old, resolution. So, okay, we're good.
So one of the things the attorney is still checking on is she wanted to make sure that there was blanket authority to adopt fees by resolution. And I know there's little pieces here and there throughout our code that says fees can be adopted by resolution. And she wanted to go through and independently verify that each one of these is authorized. I think what we're going to do instead is just bring forward an ordinance at the beginning of Title 20 that says all fees for services pursuant to this chapter shall be adopted by resolution. And it would be an ordinance, and then we would adopt the new fee resolution to follow. So I don't think there's a problem with what we've done in the past. She just thought it would be easier if there's one place that gives the authority for adopting fees by resolution.
I've got one pile on here, and Brandy's in the other room, and she can jump on about this. And if you wanted us to continue to provide this service, we'd need to incorporate the fees for this into this fee resolution. And it has to do with notary service, and I don't think we should be. This is something that the private sector provides for and charges fees for. And I know as a banker, I had a notary stamp for years, and we, in the last few years, we had 6 at least notary stamps around City Hall. We got it down to 3 right now, and I'd like to get it down to 2. We have a need to notarize our own documents from time to time, so we need a couple of them around. Currently, we have no authority in our code to do the service. We just do it for the public, and we're not charging for it. And you should be charging $10 every time you put an impression on a document. That's what state law allows for. When we surveyed other cities, from Gig Harbor to Bainbridge Island, Paulsbo and Bainbridge Island provide the service, but nobody else does. And
And do they charge, Mayor?
Yes, they do. Everybody else charges. And if we're gonna do this, we need to charge for it. I don't think it's a good use of our staff time, for one. And secondly, this is something that people do, you know, your FedEx store does this as a revenue source. Government shouldn't be doing things that the private sector does for revenue. I don't feel right about it. And if we're going to do it, though, we need to put it in our code, and we need to put this into this fee resolution also. But my recommendation is we just don't do it, and we shouldn't be doing it because we don't have any authority to do it.
How often has it been occurring?
All the time in DCD for bond forms and other documents.
Yeah, internally we do about.
Yeah, I'm talking external customers.
About equal. I mean, matter of fact, it's a couple of realtors primarily that come in with all kinds of real estate documents that they ought to be taking to the title company, and they spend an hour or more of time with a staff member. Now, they probably wouldn't if we charged for this and we're providing for free. Maybe they would, you know, go to the title company. I don't know, but we're doing about 130 for ourselves. You know. For public works and for planning, you know, we do those, and we need to have a couple of notary stamps around here. This year, we're on track for about 140, and we've done one external, but obviously City Hall hasn't been open. So just wanted to bounce that off of you guys before I made a decision, you know, when we open back up, not to offer that service.
Is it exclusively by these realtors, or does the general public come in as well?
Once in a while, but I would say the people that abuse it are you know, I think it's abuse when you come in with 10 documents and you tie up a significant amount of our staff time.
Your proposed fee schedule, would that be $10 per document?
Correct. But I don't think it's worth the time.
Right.
Myself, I don't think it's worth your staff's time.
So when you say external versus internal, when somebody has to notarize like a subdivision application, is that an internal notary, or is that something that you're trying to eliminate?
If it's our documents, Nick, I would say that's internal.
Okay.
Yes. Anything related to city business, we should be providing notary service for. Sean refinances his house or redoes his will, you know, he needs to go to his bank or you know, a company that does this service, in my opinion.
I'm just going to speak in that we did notary work at our bank also, but we had a rule that we would only notarize for our customers. There's a significant amount of liability with notarizing documents.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that we had a form they had to fill out, and that we had to put their identification on it. You know, we had a record of every document we notarized. So if we're not doing that, I would suggest we start doing that.
We are, our staff is trained, they are bonded, I mean, and we're paying all of those expenses, and
right.
we are I mean, one thing, I was really a stickler when my notary stamp, you're not, supposedly you're personally liable and not
right.
For
right.
whatever you put your stamp on.
Right.
Too. I was really picky about what I did when I was.
Right.
When I was
Correct.
I tend to agree with you, Rob, that it's probably not worth our staff time, and there's other sources of getting these types of things notarized. But love the fact that any of our internal documents or documents that we need to do to conduct city business, we would continue to do that.
Yeah, and currently we have 3 stamps. I think if we're not doing external, I think we can take that, reduce our expenses further, and we only need 2. You know, somebody that primarily does it, and then somebody to back it up. Vacation.
I have 2 in my department, but that's nice when somebody's out to have the backup in the building. But
yeah.
And
So
I
maybe
would imagine most of them's done in your department.
no. Public Works.
Well, I was just going to say, geographically, it might be good to have somebody in City Hall and somebody else over at Nick's shop.
Yeah.
So
I think that's probably how it'll work out. I mean,
I don't have a problem with keeping it to our own internal use.
you know, we have a sunk cost right now. We have them. You know, it's when they come up for renewal, we'll evaluate. And so I know of 3 over here. I wasn't aware that Nick had them 2 over there. So it's a bigger can of worms than I thought.
So would we want to charge when they are notarizing a city application form?
I don't. We could, and if we're going to, we need to put this in this fee resolution that if we're charging for something, we have to have authority to do that.
So what's it cost us for covering the bonds and everything for
I was
notary?
afraid you were going to ask that. Probably, it's been 5 years since I've been one. North of $100 at least for the bond. Then you've got training. You know, we're spending a few $100s.
So back to your other comment, Rob, where the state requires you to charge. So getting back to Nick's question, would we be in violation?
They don't require you to charge.
Wow.
They cap what you
Got
can
it.
charge.
Understand. Okay.
I don't have a problem with charging for these folks that come in, even if it's in our internal document. I mean, that just helps cover the cost of the notaries.
Right, but I was going to say, are we already charging to process those documents?
True.
You know, so do we just add it into that fee and not make it a separate notarizing fee for those particular documents?
Well, what do you do for the folks that come in with theirs already notarized? Is that they're going to pay anyway?
Yeah, basically the same fee.
Yeah.
I think it's tricky because some projects require notaries and some don't, and it depends whether they're seeking to have a bond with their project or not. So it definitely isn't built into the application fee because we don't know from one project to the next, with the exception of a subdivision application, which has to be notarized. Anybody who has to put up a bond for something needs a notary, and somebody who doesn't need a bond doesn't need a notary.
Okay.
I don't see a problem with charging separately if they need it notarized.
Not if that's the conditions, yeah.
It complicates things though because of Nick's location, and to collect these one-off fees and send somebody, because Noah's the only guy that can receipt money. So
It's actually, they would be paying it at the time they file their application in most cases, I think.
okay. If
So
you
we
want
can
to
just
build
tack it up.
it into your fee resolution and your application process.
Yeah, we'll do it like the tech fee. So every time you put an application in, you pay a tech fee. If there's also a notary, you pay the notary fee for however many documents you have to notarize.
Okay. I'm not going to.
Works for me.
Okay. So it sounds like you got something else to add. That's why I brought it up at this point, because it's part of this fee resolution if we're going to do it. So, but we'll as a practice stop doing it when we open for the public's documents.
Okay, is there any more discussion on the development fees? Nick, are you going to bring that forward then, or?
Yeah, it'll either go forward next week or in September, depending on whether I can get an ordinance from Charlie for the authorization for the resolution. I'll work on that with her and hopefully get it before council next week.
Okay. Committee, you have a problem with it?
Nope.
Beck?
No, I don't. I'm just going to invite someone to resend me that that one particular file, because what I printed isn't a red line version, and I'd like to.
I'll forward it right now, Beck.
Oh, thanks.
Yep. And it's on its way. You should have it there within a couple seconds.
Okay, perfect.
Technology. Speaking of which, are we ready to move on to sewer CFCs?
Yeah.
We are, I think. Okay, so we have discussed.
Beautiful, beautiful PowerPoint, by the way, I might add. Oh,
You see how smooth that was, transitioned right into it.
yep.
So this has been a topic we've been talking about, is the CFC calculation. Marina asked me to put together some cash flow scenarios so we can kind of really walk this through as a problem solving. So the first couple of slides we're going to go through our slides you've already seen. So for this analysis, I worked with the planning department, Nick Bond here, and we focused on sewer connections that we are anticipating to occur over the next biennium, or the next 2 years. And these sewer connections are not credit eligible. That means that these are 100% cash flow to the city. And we'll get to why that's important here. So again, you've already seen this table. This is the table that Katie Isaacson walked us through at the last study session. This is currently the sewer system CIP with the total CIP amount at $26 million, with the identified portion of capital projects that are going to be included in the CFC calculation at $20 million.
So if you want to back up there, the reason those boxes are yellow, those are projects that will likely be, that we're not, while they're in our plan, they're projects we're likely not going to undertake, at least in the next 2 bienniums. And so those projects, it's the Glen Mora project and things around Ruby Creek. And for those projects, those significant multifamily projects to move forward, they need to build lift stations. And this will allow them, so those projects won't move forward without a lift station. And they'll have to build those lift stations if they want them to happen before we're prepared to do that, which could be a number of years out. And so we have excluded these projects as far as our cash flow assumptions going forward, because if the developer builds it, he's going to be looking for credit. And so we'll see very little of this revenue. So we've excluded any of the connection charges related to these projects in the cash flow projections that we're about to show you.
So 5A, B, and C are all under the heading of Albertson Pump Station upgrade?
No, that's Albertson's pump station. We don't know what the cost is. And then it's the Bravo Terrace lift station. And then there's 2 lift stations farther down Sydney heading towards Cedar Heights.
Yeah, I understand that, but because Albertson's Pump Station didn't have a dollar amount there,
Yeah.
the way it's number 5, and then you got 5A, B, C, and I was going to question why D isn't in there as well, but it just confused me the way it was laid out.
Yeah, and actually 5D and 6 also would be developer constructed projects.
Okay.
So they should have probably been highlighted in yellow too, I would think.
Yeah.
But they don't say that, I guess. I mean, they say CFC. They don't necessarily say developer the way Albertson's pump station says developer. So that might be something we want to clarify with public.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that all of those projects that are listed at 100% for the CFC are all developer paid or.
Yeah, I think the 100% projects are the projects that CFCs are paying for 100%, but the developer is going to build it and then seek credit. The Albertson's pump station upgrade is not CFC funded. It means we're telling a developer to build it. We're not funding it at all.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering based on the way it's laid out there, but it also kind of threw me when there wasn't a dollar amount associated with either. So
yeah, and I think it's also important to mention that we don't know if the developer is going to seek a credit for these projects, or if this will be a project that's the city's responsibility. And the McCormick Pump Station 2 is a prime example. We are building that one, paid for from CFC revenue. The Marina Pump Station, that's one that we have on the city project list that we are going to build with a combination of rate revenue and CFC. So I think just because it says CFC does not necessarily mean that the developer will build it. It means it's credit eligible under that category.
right, and I understand. Okay.
Yeah, to move forward sooner versus our timeline, they're going to need to build it and possibly seek a credit.
Right.
Because right now we're building McCormick Pump Station 2. It's almost done. And then in this next biennium, we hope to be in construction towards the tail end of the biennium on the Marina Pump Station. Those are the only projects we're concerned with in this biennium for cash flow purposes.
So moving on here is one of the topics that we got conversation with Katie. there was 3 points. It was whether to include a CPA, an automatic CPI adjuster as a part of our new sewer CFC, and whether to use a 50%, what she called interest. I've kind of reclassified in this table as inflation, because it seemed that term resonated more with the council. But the technical term was interest. It was either 50% interest or 100% interest. So using, again, these are all numbers from Katie Isaacson's presentation. So the 20 million is the chart we just walked through. The current facilities at a 50% inflation factor. And I want to just point out here, and here's what it would be with the 100% inflation factor. And the only variable that changes is the cost of the current facilities being built into the total sewer CIP cost. We'll come back to the next assumption, which is the assumed ERUs, or as we like to talk about as the denominator. Because again, I think it's a policy issue. It's a philosophical issue. It's a methodology that factors into the math. But I just wanted to walk through Katie Isaacson's math scenario and what that resulted in. So under the 50% inflation or interest factor, we arrive at a total CFC of $7,680, or I back it back down to what the city would net, $7,567. If we use the 100% inflation factor, we're at roughly $400. So this table represents two scenarios now: the 50%, which I'm calling scenario A, or the 100% interest or inflation factor, scenario B. The difference is about $832 per CFC connection. The columns here on the left give you approximation of, if we received 46 connections in a year, how much revenue would we receive in under scenario A versus scenario B, and the delta. So we can real quickly get a range of revenue impact based on actual connections received in a year. And I want to pause there because that's important, just as a setup table for the next piece, because the next piece is really what we are looking at for the next biennium. We're projecting out of what we think connections will be.
So those connections per year, is that an estimated range of high and low? Is that?
No, I honestly, I just put 50 and just went up 10 modules. So I had 100, then put 150, just to give a visual range of what this and it happened to correlate to the next scenario magically. So that kind of worked out. So in scenario A, again, that's the 50% inflation factor. Again, I worked with Nick Bond here we went through and identified all the different projects and what he would stand up and say, yes, these are the sewer connections we feel comfortable that are truly going to come to fruition in the next biennium. And we came to about 300 total for the biennium, or I split it 150 per year for the single family. When we factor in the multifamily connections, we factor in an additional 46 per year, or 92 for the biennium. So you can observe the total resulting revenue from the 150 and the 46, which gets us to our total sewer C revenue of about $1.4 million under the 50% inflation or interest factor. I'm just going to quickly jump to scenario B, just so you can see the difference. Under scenario B, we would collect about $1.6 million, or roughly $160,000 more per year in CFC revenue, depending if you go with the 50% or 100% interest flat factor. So that gives you real quickly the revenue impact based on that policy decision. This last row here is something that the mayor and I have talked about. For the Marina pump station, for example, we have a combination of operating and CFC funds to pay for this project. We are borrowing $4 million roughly to pay for this project, with the expectation for the debt service to be paid for from CFCs. So as a part of developing this analysis and proposal, I want to throw in a deduction of our total sewer CFC revenue to pre-fund a debt service fund. So what that would mean is that we would set aside $275,000 of our CFC revenue in our debt service fund to have at least 1 to 2 years of debt service payments available as we move throughout time. one reason we talked about taking this approach is that if in any year the sewer connections do not come in as forecast, we have at least a year of debt service payments available to make those payments. So it buys us some time by pre-funding a debt service fund. So I wanted to throw that concept out there to the Finance Committee and let you guys think about whether you like that approach, and we can talk about it further.
Yes.
Yep. Agree.
Okay.
Kind of its own reserve for
Yep.
the debt service.
So even when we factor in obligating debt service payments and send them aside, we would actually net then 1.2 to 1.37 million dollars for our projects per year. So as the mayor and I are developing the capital budget, currently, as we talked about on the other table, we're winding down on McCormick Lift Station number 2. The other big monster project on that list is Marina Pump Station. We currently have a project estimate cost of $8 million. Again, I want to identify how do we plan on paying for this project. Well, we have the $4.1 million of loan funds available. We have these sewer operating rate revenue, which is residing in our capital fund. These are sewer operating revenues that were transferred into our capital fund a few years ago, and it's been residing in there. So we are obligating those operating revenues to the project as part of the operating contribution. If you think back to the table that we have on the sewer capital plan, it's 50% sewer operating, 50% sewer CFC. I'm identifying some operating revenue that we have in the capital fund itself to pledge towards the project. Once these revenues are spent, all the funds in the capital project, 433, will all be capital facility dollars. So there will no longer be any operating revenue mixed into that fund balance. So it'll make for a little cleaner conversation as we talk about what's in that fund balance. Right now I have to separate out how much was prior operating revenue and how much is current capital CFC money in this capital fund. So this will help clean that up. And we're taking a similar approach with our water fund too, spinning down prior water operating rate revenue for well 11 to get to a place where when we talk about the capital funds, the only money in those funds are from capital dollars. Then we consider the CFC forecast, again, 50% or the 100%, which then results in the delta needing to be covered by operating rate revenue. So you can really see the impact here of either going with the 50% or 100%. It's a shift between the CFCs, the capital funds, or the operating funds to fully fund this $8 million project.
Well, you convinced me at 100.
Your guys' decision. We'll go either way.
Yeah, it's so much clearer now looking at this format. Any idea, just ballpark, Noah, based on the operating rate revenue and the number of connections we have in the city, what does that $585,000 look like versus the 911 when spread across ratepayers per month?
Oh, I don't know offhand.
Okay.
I can come back to you with the number.
Remember,
Yeah,
about 2 years from now, we're going to be redoing these capital facilities charges again about the time that we're going to construction on this Marina pump station. And part of that exercise, it's a full look at the sewer utility rates, the whole shebang. So, and remember, in the scenarios we're showing you here, CFCs are paying for a larger portion of this, and it's just to show you that it can. That earlier slide showed a 50-50 split. So in reality, yeah, we've programmed CFCs paying that debt service payment, but it likely could be that rates should be paying it and can pay it. But we've got to, there's a bigger exercise to do related to that.
No, I like scenario B because it's basically telling the rest of the ratepayers that, not only is development paying for development, but there's also infrastructure that they'll be taking advantage of moving forward. And so there's a little piece of that as well. I mean, I think it's easy to explain and equitable.
Mhm.
I totally agree. I mean, there's just upgrades to the current system that going to have to be paid for by ratepayers. So
Yep.
I agree.
I would just like to add the estimates for growth that were on the previous slide, the 46 multifamily and the 150 residential. Those are obviously a little bit higher than what we've seen in recent years, and we're justifying it because those lots are actually coming to market. But builders still have to build the homes, and the market has to be able to absorb that rate of growth. And so we want to make sure that you're comfortable with those numbers when we move into budget. But I think that those, based on the number of projects that are nearing final plat right now, I feel comfortable at 150, and I think that might even be a little bit low. And I think we're also probably a little bit low on the multifamily if the 5 projects that are now right at the doorstep of being permitted, if they all move forward. But that'll become more clear over the next 2 months as we develop our budget and as these projects move forward.
The
I
other,
think the key part for me is what you just said, that you're comfortable with those numbers. So I'm relying on your guys' expertise. I question why you came up with 46 and not rounded to 50, but I'm not going to say anything, but just
To be fair,
government work.
I did have it at 50 at first, and then Nick questioned why I was rounding up. And I said, fine, I'll
I
go
see.
back down to 92.
I'm used to government work, so 50 would have been the number I would have plugged in. But
That's what I had, and Nick didn't like it. So I said, okay, we'll shrink it down. That's fine.
okay, let's go back to that 6,612 number, the denominator number. And I know that we had that discussion at the last work study or whenever it was. And I know that you were going to or have evaluated that a little more. Do you want to give us some additional background on that number?
Well, so we've been discussing, again, I think this is a philosophical matter. As Katie kind of was alluding to, this number represents the total ERUs in the system as a whole after the conclusion of 6 years. To me, it's just a number. I can definitively say using that number will not fiscally constrain this list, right? It's just not how that math works.
Right.
But we looked at using a different ERU count. So there's either really 2 schools. You could do this averaging of current residents and future growth to create the 6,000 figure, or you could go with a primarily growth, all pays for growth. And at that point, we're looking at, well, for the next biennium, we're talking about what, 300 single family residents. So if you're going 6 years out, maybe 900. Nick would probably have a good number. So maybe 1,000 ERUs over the next 6 years. And when we did the math on 1,000 ERUs, if you wanted to use that as your denominator to say that growth is paying for growth, you're sitting on like a $50,000 ERU connection. So
I
that's,
just want to make sure we can defend that number, because that number is what's driving the CFC amount.
correct.
If you add up all of the projects that are possibly in the pipeline, which includes the full build out of McCormick Woods, and any project that's coming for a pre-app, I can get you to 6,000 connections. I don't think that all those projects can happen if the city isn't the one actually building these, because so many of the improvements actually have to be developer funded, designed, constructed, and then they seek the credit for it. But if we actually went out and built all of this stuff, I think you'd get a lot closer to that number because the infrastructure is in place for that development.
For it to happen.
Yeah, and I think we want to grow faster than we're growing. I mean, we're pedaling pretty hard, and I don't think our community's ready for us to grow faster than we're growing. I think we're growing at a fast enough clip, and like Nick spoke to, that number is a factor that represents the full build out. And so we've used that number, and then we've put projects in there that if a developer truly wants them, they can go out and build that infrastructure and seek credit. But we're not prepared to it'd be foolish for us to go and debt ourselves count on all of that development and then it
Mhm.
doesn't happen, and then we hang our ratepayers out, and that's just philosophically wrong.
Yep, I agree.
I agree, yeah.
I can share that, and I think I shared this with economic development the other morning, but McCormick Communities has indicated that they are in the process of ramping up to 400 lots per year is their goal for development. And so they're not going to be there within the 2-year period, but I believe that in 3 to 4 years from now, they're going to be trying to plat lots at that rate, which is going to be a significant change in volume.
So Beck, I don't know if you can see my Excel file. I changed screens, but I can't tell if it changed.
Right,
Yep.
yeah.
Yes, you did.
Okay. Okay, so this is the analysis I was just discussing. Scenario A, scenario B, the assumed ERUs, the sewer CFC rate, okay, all the same. We just
Right.
and over to the right here, you can see, again, this is actually looking using the 50%, but at 1,000 ERUs, this kind of tells you what the CFC rate would be. Yes, you'd receive a lot of revenue if people were actually paying $50,000
Oh, right.
for a connection. But
Both connections.
Well, yeah, both connections. That's right. If you got that, it would turn development off.
yeah,
Mhm.
so that's
So I
where
just want to make sure that our numbers are realistic and we can defend the ERU number, the denominator number we're using. And Nick seems quite comfortable that, we can do that.
And I think it's important too, this and that transportation fee, we've got to shepherd these things along and get them in place. We've got a lot of development going out there, and we need that revenue for these capital projects and all the things that we want to accomplish. And the longer we wait, the more lost opportunity we have.
Yep, exactly.
So the exercise that I was charged with was take a look at the CFCs that we were presented, see if we can kind of pull it apart, look at the cash flows, in particular for the projects that we want to focus on for the next 2 years. We eliminated projects that would be in the category of credit eligible because that would not be 100% cash flow to the city. So again, that I think our future conversations on the credit front and our application of that and what that means to those projects and when those can be done. Kind of focus on looking at the next biennial budget and in particular the Marina pump station. How can we pay for this large project that the city is committed to?
So if you're comfortable with it, we're planning on bringing this presentation to the next week for a discussion. And as long as we get everybody else having the same understanding that you are, that the first meeting in September, we would plan to adopt. Historically, we have waited a period of time from when we implement it to when we pass it to when we implement it. And I don't care for that. It creates a run on permits at an artificial time. I think we should, I don't think we should wait more than a month. It takes us a few weeks, doesn't it, Nick? A couple of weeks from when we take the action for it to be published in our code. A couple weeks, a month at the most is from when I think we take that you guys take that action to when the fees.
4 weeks is what we need to change things in the permit system to make sure it's working properly.
Well, there's a period of time between the time we approve an ordinance, but by the time it goes into effect too. So unless it's an emergency.
Correct. So I think 30 days, I would recommend something like 30 days when you pass it to when it goes into effect. So maybe it goes into effect October 1st or, the second week in October or something.
Well, it can go into effect, as far as I'm concerned, anytime after the legally required wait period between action and an effective date.
Yeah, what Nick was referring to, he's got computer
Right.
systems he needs to update beyond that. And there's a little bit of a process there. So if we gave him a month, I think would.
So the meeting is on the 8th, right? Where we're going to consider this.
I think so, yes.
So October 1st would be totally fine. That's plenty of time for us.
And put it in the ordinance, as long as Charlie clears it. I don't think we have to wait 30 days for something like this, but if she clears it, then just put the start date in the ordinance if you want. Okay, I for one am comfortable with the presentation. I think you should go ahead and move forward with it and bring it to the council at the next, not tonight, but a week from tonight. And make sure everyone else is familiar and gets comfortable with it.
It's on there. This is a discussion item for next week.
Okay.
And I think
Sounds
the
good.
three of us like the 100%, do we not?
I do. I prefer that.
And how do you guys feel about the CPI adjuster, the auto adjuster to keep up over time?
I'm okay with it. I
Okay.
think
Yep.
that's keeps us from
From falling
having
off.
to deal with this again.
Right.
And massive increases every 5 years or 6 years because you didn't fail to keep up with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Can we state that the recommendation of the finance committee is for the 100% interest and that to have a CPI factor?
Yes.
Okay.
Becky, you okay with that?
Yeah, no, I am. And I think we need to do it on our traffic impact fees too.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yep.
Well, for what we're dealing with tonight.
For what we're dealing with tonight, I'm in agreement on that.
Okay.
Would you do it
Sounds good.
annually or biannually?
It's adjusted annually, isn't it?
Well, that was my question. Do you want to do it annually or biannually?
Yeah, I think it should be annually automatic.
Yep, I agree.
Okay.
Right.
Is there anything else, Noah, Mayor?
We can adjourn the meeting. I've got a personnel thing or two I'd share with you offline.
All right, so I guess we could say we're going into closed session. So why don't we go ahead and just adjourn the Finance Committee meeting